The blue glow of my laptop screen reflected off the empty ramen cup sitting beside my keyboard. Third cup today, third all-nighter this week. I rubbed my eyes and tried to focus on the lines of code that had been mocking me for the past 6 hours. One small bug in the patient matching algorithm, and our entire pilot program could crash. "Come on, Sarah," I muttered to myself, pushing my black hair behind my ears. "You've got a Stanford MBA. You should be able to figure this out." But the imposter syndrome voice in my head whispered back, "Maybe you're just not cut out for this. Maybe your parents are right." My phone buzzed with yet another missed call notification. Mom? Again. I'd been avoiding her calls for 3 days, ever since she mentioned the family meeting we needed to have. I knew what that meant. Another intervention about my life choices. At 29, I was living in a 400-square-foot studio apartment in Palo Alto, eating instant ramen while my Stanford classmates were buying houses and posting vacation photos on Instagram. My credit cards were maxed out. My savings account had $247, and I hadn't bought new clothes in 8 months. MedConnect, my telemedicine startup, was supposed to change everything. We were connecting rural patients with urban specialists through AI-powered matching and secure video consultations. 4 years of my life, 2 failed prototypes, and 1 spectacular previous startup failure had led to this moment. The algorithm finally compiled successfully. I leaned back in my cheap IKEA chair and allowed myself a small smile. Maybe we'd make it another month. My phone rang. Mom again. "Hi, Mom," I answered, trying to sound awake and successful. "Sarah, honey, you sound tired. Are you eating enough?" Classic mom. Linda Chen, former ICU nurse turned hospital administrator, could diagnose exhaustion through a phone call. "I'm fine, just working late on a project. That's what I want to talk about. Can you come to dinner Sunday? Your father and I need to discuss some things with you. Michael and Jennifer will be there too." My stomach dropped. A full family gathering meant serious business. "Is everything okay? Is someone sick?" "Everyone's fine. We just need to talk about your future. Sweetheart, it's time." After I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the black laptop screen, dark circles under my eyes, skin pale from too many hours indoors, wearing the same Stanford hoodie I'd had since graduate school. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was time to give up. Sunday arrived too quickly. I parked my 10-year-old Honda Civic behind Michael's Tesla Model S and Jennifer's BMW in my parents' driveway. The Palo Alto house they'd bought for $400,000 in 1995 was now worth $3 million, a constant reminder of how timing and smart investments could change everything. "Sarah?" Mom opened the door before I could knock. At 55. Linda Chen still had the energy of someone half her age, her black hair perfectly styled, wearing the kind of elegant blouse that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "You're too thin," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Are you sure you're eating enough vegetables?" "I'm fine, Mom, just busy." Dad appeared from his study, still wearing his weekend uniform of polo shirt and khakis. Dr. Bipao, David Chen had the posture of someone accustomed to authority. 30 years of being the head of orthopedic surgery at Stanford Medical would do that. "Sarah, good to see you. How's the computer project going?" He always called it my computer project, as if I were still 12 years old learning to code. "It's going well, Dad?" "We're seeing some promising results in our pilot program." He nodded absently, already looking past me toward the living room where I could hear Michael's voice explaining something to Jennifer in his doctor tone. Michael was everything our parents had dreamed of in a son. At 32, he was already a successful cardiologist with a perfect wife, 2 adorable kids, and a house in Menlo Park. He'd never questioned the path laid out for him pre-med at UC Berkeley, medical school at UCSF, residency, fellowship, practice, linear, predictable, successful. Aunt Sarah. My 7-year-old nephew Danny ran over and hugged my legs. At least someone was genuinely happy to see me. Hey, buddy, how's second grade? Really hard, but Mom says if I work really hard like Uncle Michael did, I can be a doctor too. I glanced at Michael's wife, Karen, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. He's been talking about being a paleontologist lately too, she added quickly. Jennifer emerged from the kitchen carrying a wine glass and looking like she'd stepped out of a corporate magazine. At 30, she'd just made partner at a big law firm and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone about her billable hours and important clients. "Sarah, how's the startup life treating you?" She air-kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume. "Can't complain," I lied. "That's so brave of you. I could never handle that much uncertainty. I need my steady paycheck and benefits." She laughed in that way that was supposed to sound supportive but felt condescending. Mom called us to dinner, and we gathered around the familiar dining room table, the same table where I'd done homework as a kid, where we'd celebrated Michael's medical school acceptance and Jennifer's law school graduation, where I'd announced my decision to start my first company and watched my parents' faces fall. Dad cleared his throat after Mom served the main course, her famous Taiwanese braised pork that usually made everything better. Tonight, it sat heavy in my stomach. "Sarah, your mother and I have been talking. Here it comes. We're concerned about your situation. You're 29 years old, living paycheck to paycheck, with no real job security or benefits." "I have a company, Dad. It's not like I'm unemployed." Michael leaned forward, using his bedside manner voice. "Sarah, we all admire your entrepreneurial spirit, but there comes a time when you have to be realistic about your prospects." "What does that mean?" Jennifer set down her wine glass. "It means maybe it's time to consider a more traditional career path. You have an MBA from Stanford. You could get a great job at any major company." "I don't want a job at a major company. I want to build something that matters." Mom reached across the table and took my hand. "Honey, we know you want to help people, but there are other ways to do that. Your father has connections at Stanford Medical. You could run healthcare administration, use your business skills in a stable environment." The irony wasn't lost on me. They wanted me to get a job managing the kind of healthcare system I was trying to improve. "What about your previous startup?" Dad asked. "You lost almost $100,000 in 18 months of your life. How is this different?" The question hit like a punch to the gut. My first company, Health Scheduler, had been a spectacular failure. Bad product-market fit, poor timing, and my own inexperience had burned through my savings and a small family loan that I was still paying back. This is different because I learned from those mistakes. MedConnect is solving a real problem. We have data showing— "Data?" Michael interrupted. "Sarah, I work in medicine. I see these healthcare tech companies come and go all the time. Most of them are solutions looking for problems. Rural patients are waiting months to see specialists. Some are dying while they wait. That's not a fake problem, Michael. And there are probably good reasons for those wait times. Medical care isn't like ordering food delivery. You can't just optimize it with an app." I felt my face flushing. "You don't even know what we do. None of you have ever asked for details about how the platform works or what problems we're solving." Dad's voice took on the tone he used with difficult patience. "Sarah, we love you, and we want what's best for you. But you're almost 30 with no savings, no health insurance, and you're living like a college student. When are you going to grow up?" The words hung in the air. "When are you going to grow up?" "We've made a decision," Mom said softly. "We can't keep enabling this. We won't be able to help with emergencies anymore, and we need you to start paying back the loan from your first company immediately." Immediately, my voice cracked slightly. "Mom, I'm barely making payroll as it is." "That's exactly our point," Dad said firmly. "You're barely surviving while your siblings are thriving. Michael just bought a second home. Jennifer made partner. What do you have to show for 4 years of work?" I looked around the table. Michael was nodding sympathetically, but I could see the relief in his eyes that he wasn't the one being intervention-ed. Jennifer was trying to look supportive, while clearly calculating how this drama would affect family dynamics. "We're not trying to punish you," Dad added. "We're trying to motivate you. Sometimes people need to face consequences before they make better choices. So you're cutting me off unless I give up my company and get a real job." "We're asking you to be practical," Mom said. "Doctor, Patterson in your father's department is retiring next year. The healthcare administration position would be perfect for someone with your background." My phone started buzzing in my purse. I ignored it. "You've given this startup 4 years of your life," Jennifer said. "At some point, you have to cut your losses and move forward. Look, I know it's hard to admit when something isn't working." "It is working," I snapped. "You just refuse to see it because it doesn't fit your definition of success." The phone kept buzzing. Multiple calls. "Sarah," Michael said gently, "maybe what Jennifer is trying to say is that even if your app helps some people, it might not be financially viable long-term. There's no shame in pivoting to a more stable career." "I think you should answer that," Mom said, pointing to my still buzzing phone. "It seems urgent." I hesitated, then pulled out my phone. 7 missed calls from Dr. Martinez at UC Davis Medical Center. My heart started racing. "I need to take this," I said, standing up from the table. "Of course," Dad said sarcastically. "The computer project emergency can't wait until after family dinner." I answered the call, stepping slightly away from the table, but remaining in the dining room. "Dr. Martinez, is everything okay?" "Sarah, I've been trying to reach you. We need to talk about the pilot program results." His voice was loud enough that my family could hear every word. "The data is incredible. We've seen a 40% reduction in specialist wait times and a 60% improvement in patient satisfaction scores. The rural clinics are reporting outcomes they've never achieved before." I felt my family's attention shift from disappointment to curiosity. UC Davis wants to expand immediately. We're prepared to fund expansion to 20 rural clinics across Central California. We're talking about a 2-year contract worth $1.2 million. The silence at the table was deafening. That's wonderful news. Dr. Martinez, can we schedule a meeting to discuss the details?" "Absolutely. And Sarah, I want you to know that what you've built is going to save lives. We've had patients who would have waited 6 months for consultations getting care within days. You should be very proud." After I hung up, I slowly returned to my seat. My family stared at me with expressions ranging from confusion to calculation. "Well," Dad said slowly, $1.2 million is a significant contract. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. "Honey, why didn't you tell us things were going so well?" Before I could respond, my phone rang again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. "Sarah Chen, this is Rachel Kim from TechCrunch. I'm calling about the story we're running tomorrow about MedConnect's patient outcome data." My blood went cold. "What story?" "Someone leaked your pilot program results to us. The numbers are impressive, but we need to ask about HIPAA compliance. There are concerns that patient data might have been improperly shared." My successful moment evaporated instantly. If we had HIPAA violations, everything we'd built could be shut down overnight. "I can't comment right now," I managed. "You'll need to speak with our legal team." The problem was, we didn't have a legal team. We had one overworked healthcare lawyer who charged us $300 an hour we couldn't afford. "What's the timeline on the story?" I asked. "We're publishing tomorrow morning. I really need a statement from you about the HIPAA concerns." "I'll get back to you in 2 hours," I said, and hung up. "Sarah." Mom looked concerned. "What's wrong?" "There might be a legal issue with our pilot program. If we violated patient privacy regulations, we could lose everything." Jennifer leaned forward, finally interested. "What kind of legal issue? HIPAA violations are serious business. You could face federal fines, lawsuits." "I know what the consequences are," I snapped. Do you have proper legal representation? She continued. Because if this is as serious as it sounds, we have a lawyer, one lawyer, who we can barely afford. My phone rang a third time. Unknown number again. Maybe you shouldn't answer that, Michael suggested. You look pale. But something made me pick up. Sarah Chen speaking. Ms. Chen, this is Dr. Rebecca Williams, Chief Medical Officer at Kaiser Permanente, Northern California. Kaiser Permanente, one of the largest healthcare systems in the country. We've been quietly observing MedConnect's pilot program for the past 6 months. The results are remarkable. I looked at my family, who were hanging on every word. We'd like to discuss a partnership opportunity. Are you available to meet this week? Of course. What kind of partnership are you considering? We're interested in acquiring MedConnect's technology and offering you a position as Senior Vice President of Digital Health Innovation. The acquisition would be worth $12 million, with a starting salary of $200,000 per year for your role. The room went completely silent. I could hear my heart beating. That's a very generous offer. Dr. Williams, I'll need to discuss it with my team and get back to you. Of course. But I should mention that we're not the only healthcare system interested, and given the current media attention your company is receiving, I'd encourage you to consider this opportunity seriously and quickly. After I hung up, nobody spoke for a full minute. Finally, Dad broke the silence. $12 million. I nodded, still in shock. And a $200,000 salary, Jennifer asked. That's what she said. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. Honey, this is wonderful. You've done it. But as I looked around the table at my family's suddenly supportive faces, I felt sick. 5 minutes ago, they were telling me to grow up and get a real job. Now they were celebrating my success like they'd believed in me all along. But we still need to deal with this HIPAA issue, I said quietly. That's what makes the Kaiser offer even more appealing, Jennifer said, switching to lawyer mode. If you're facing potential legal problems, selling to a big company with proper legal resources could protect you. So you'll take the Kaiser offer? Michael asked. Given the circumstances, it seems like perfect timing. I don't know, I said quietly. What do you mean you don't know? Dad looked incredulous. Sarah, this solves everything. The legal issues, the financial instability, our concerns about your future. It's like a miracle. But it means giving up control of the company, becoming an employee again. A very well-paid employee, Jennifer pointed out. With legal protection and corporate resources, you could pay off all your debts, buy a house, start planning for the future, Mom added. And you'd be safe from any legal issues. They were right about the practical benefits. The Kaiser offer solved every problem I had: financial, legal, and family approval. But sitting there, watching my family's faces transform from disappointment to excitement based solely on dollar amounts, I realized something that made my stomach churn. I need to think about it, I said. What's there to think about? Dad asked. Sarah, you've proven your point. You built something valuable. Now cash in and move on to the next phase of your life. As I drove home that night, my mind raced between the UC Davis success, the TechCrunch crisis, and the Kaiser offer. 3 phone calls that had completely changed my family's perception of me in the span of 30 minutes. But the call that bothered me most wasn't from a reporter or a corporate executive. It was the silence from my family during the 4 years I'd been building something they couldn't understand, followed by their immediate enthusiasm once they could measure it in familiar terms. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my desk with 3 urgent problems demanding immediate attention: the HIPAA investigation that could destroy everything, the UC Davis expansion that could save us, and the Kaiser acquisition that could change my life forever. At 5 a.m., I called our healthcare lawyer, David Kim. Sarah, do you know what time it is? David, I need you to review our HIPAA compliance immediately. TechCrunch is running a story today questioning whether we've improperly shared patient data. There was a pause. What kind of data was leaked? Aggregated pilot program results. No individual patient information, but they're suggesting our data collection methods might be problematic. I'll review our protocols and get back to you in 2 hours. Don't talk to any reporters until then. At 7 a.m., I called an emergency team meeting. My 4 employees gathered in our small conference room, looking as stressed as I felt. We have 3 major developments, I began, and explained the UC Davis contract, the TechCrunch story, and the Kaiser offer. Holy shit, Alex said. 12 million? That's retire your parents' money. It's also giving up everything we've built, Maria pointed out. What do you think we should do? I asked them. About which part? Asked Jake, our newest developer. All of it. The HIPAA issue could shut us down. The UC Davis contract could save us. The Kaiser offer could make us all rich, but end MedConnect as we know it. Alex leaned back in his chair. Can we handle the UC Davis expansion without selling to Kaiser? Maybe. But it would mean raising Series A funding while dealing with negative press coverage. And if the HIPAA investigation finds violations, Maria asked, then none of this matters. We'd be done. My phone rang. David Kim. Sarah, I've reviewed our protocols. The good news is that all the data in question was properly anonymized and aggregated. We're compliant. And the bad news, the reporter is right that healthcare data regulations are complex. Even though we're compliant, the story could still damage your reputation and spook potential investors. How bad could it be? Depends on how it's written. Healthcare data scandals get a lot of attention. Even false accusations can be hard to recover from. After I hung up, I looked at my team. These 4 people had followed me through years of uncertainty, believing in a vision that often seemed impossible. I need to be honest with you, I said. If we turn down Kaiser and the TechCrunch story damages our reputation, we might not be able to raise funding. We could end up shutting down anyway. What's your gut telling you? Maria asked. Before I could answer, my phone rang again. Dr. Williams from Kaiser. Sarah, I'm calling because I understand TechCrunch is running a story about your company today. Given the potential for negative publicity, our legal team is recommending we accelerate our timeline. What does that mean? We need a decision by tomorrow. If there's going to be a regulatory investigation or negative press, we'd prefer to finalize the acquisition before that affects your company's value. It was a polite ultimatum. Take the offer now, or risk losing it entirely. I'll get back to you by noon tomorrow, I said. I'm sorry to pressure you, Sarah, but the healthcare market is particularly sensitive to compliance issues. We can't wait to see how this story plays out. At 10 a.m., the TechCrunch article went live, promising healthcare startup faces questions over patient data practices. The headline made it sound like we were the next Theranos. My phone started ringing immediately. First, Mom. Sarah, honey, I just saw an article online. Are you in legal trouble? No, Mom. It's just a reporter asking questions about data privacy. We're fully compliant with all regulations. But the headline sounds serious. Maybe this is why the Kaiser offer came at such a perfect time. Then Jennifer called. Sarah, I read the TechCrunch piece. As a lawyer, I have to tell you that even unfounded allegations can be damaging. The Kaiser acquisition could protect you from any legal exposure. Then Michael. Sarah, I'm getting questions from colleagues at the hospital. This kind of negative press can really hurt a healthcare company's reputation. Each call felt like another weight on my shoulders. My family, who had dismissed my work for years, was now pressuring me to abandon it at the first sign of trouble. At noon, Dr. Gum Martinez from UC Davis called. Sarah, I saw the TechCrunch article. I want you to know that it doesn't change anything from our perspective. We've reviewed your compliance thoroughly, and we have complete confidence in your platform. Thank you. Dr. Martinez, that means a lot. But I should mention that our legal team will need additional assurances before we finalize the contract. The story has raised some concerns at the administrative level. Even our strongest supporter was getting nervous. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went for a walk around Stanford campus, the same paths where I'd walked as an MBA student, dreaming of changing healthcare. I thought about the conversation with my team that morning. Alex had asked what my gut was telling me, but I wasn't sure I could trust my instincts anymore. The imposter syndrome voice was louder than ever. Who are you to think you can build something better than Kaiser Permanente? You got lucky with one pilot program. Take the money and run before it all falls apart. But there was another voice, quieter but more persistent. It reminded me of Mrs. Rodriguez, the diabetic patient whose thank you note was still taped to my laptop, of the pregnant woman who'd gotten emergency care through our platform last week, of the vision that had kept me working 18-hour days for 4 years. My phone buzzed with a text from Maria. Whatever you decide, we're with you, but remember why we started this. That evening, I drove to my parents' house. They were waiting for me in the living room, with Michael and Jennifer already there via FaceTime on Mom's iPad. "Sarah," Dad began, "we've been discussing your situation. Given the legal uncertainties and the negative press, we think the Kaiser offer is a gift from heaven. It solves all your problems," Jennifer added from the screen. "Legal protection, financial security, career advancement. And it proves that you succeeded," Mom said. "You built something valuable enough for a major corporation to want to buy. That's an incredible achievement." Michael nodded from the iPad. "From a medical perspective, working within an established health system gives you resources and credibility that a startup can't provide." I looked at my family, all genuinely concerned about my welfare, all offering advice based on their own values and experiences. "What if I don't want to sell?" I asked quietly. "Why wouldn't you?" Dad looked genuinely confused. "Because once I sell to Kaiser, MedConnect becomes just another corporate initiative. The innovation slows down, the mission gets diluted, and eventually it becomes just another healthcare IT product that gets discontinued when priorities change." "But you'd be financially secure," Mom pointed out, "and you'd be protected from any legal risks," Jennifer added. "What if the legal risks are manageable and the UC Davis contract leads to organic growth?" "That's a huge gamble," Michael said. "Healthcare is a regulated industry. One compliance misstep can destroy a company overnight." They weren't wrong about the risks, but they were focused entirely on what could go wrong, not on what we could achieve if things went right. "I need to make a decision," I said finally. "But I need to make it based on what I believe is right, not what's safe." "Sarah," Dad said gently, "sometimes the right decision and the safe decision are the same thing." As I drove home, I thought about the different definitions of success my family and I were operating under. For them, success meant financial security, career prestige, and risk mitigation. For me, success meant building something that mattered, even if it involved uncertainty. The next morning, I called Dr. Williams. "Dr. Williams, thank you for the generous offer and for being patient with our decision process." "I hope you're calling with good news, Sarah." "I'm calling to respectfully decline the acquisition offer." There was a long pause. "Can I ask why our offer is very competitive? And given your current challenges?" "Because selling to Kaiser would mean giving up control of something I've spent 4 years building. I believe we can serve patients better by staying independent." "Sarah, I need to be frank with you. The healthcare market is unforgiving for small companies. You'll be competing against well-funded corporations with deeper resources. And after today's negative press, I understand the risks, but I also understand what we're capable of building." After I hung up, I called my team together. "I turned down the Kaiser offer," I announced.
The room was quiet for a moment. Then Maria started clapping, followed by the others. "So, what's the plan?" Alex asked. "We're going to prove that we can scale independently. We'll use the UC Davis contract as validation for Series A funding. We'll address any HIPAA concerns head-on with transparency and additional compliance measures.
And we'll build the company we actually want to build. That's going to be harder than selling," Jake pointed out. "Everything worthwhile is harder than taking the easy way out," I replied. That afternoon, I called my family to tell them about my decision. "You turned down $12 million. Dad's voice rose an octave. "I did." "Sarah, are you sure you've thought this through?" Mom asked. "This was such a perfect solution to all your problems. It was a solution to the problems you were worried about. But it would have created new problems for me, like spending the rest of my career as a middle manager at a large corporation. Being a senior VP at Kaiser Permanente is hardly middle management," Jennifer protested. "It is when you're used to being the CEO of your own company." There was a long silence on the call. Finally, Michael spoke up. "I still think you're making a mistake. But I have to admit, I admire your conviction." "Thanks, Michael. That means a lot." "And just promise me you'll be careful," Mom said, "and call us if you need anything." It wasn't the enthusiastic support I'd hoped for, but it was acceptance. That felt like progress. 3 weeks later, the TechCrunch story had largely been forgotten, replaced by other tech news. Our additional compliance review had found no issues, and UC Davis had finalized the expansion contract. More importantly, 2 other health systems had reached out about pilot programs after seeing our UC Davis results. We were in preliminary talks with a Series A investor who specialized in healthcare technology. The Kaiser offer had been real, and turning it down had been risky, but staying true to my vision had opened doors I couldn't have imagined as a corporate employee. Sometimes the biggest risk is playing it safe. Epilogue. 6 months later. The MedConnect office had expanded from one cramped room to a full floor in a Palo Alto building. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows onto our new conference room, where I was reviewing quarterly metrics with our team of 15 employees. Patient consultations are up 300% since the UC Davis expansion, Maria reported, pulling up charts on the wall-mounted screen. We're now serving 12 health systems across 5 states. Average wait time for specialist consultations has dropped from 14 weeks to 3.2 weeks in our partner clinics. Alex added, and patient satisfaction scores are consistently above 90%. Our Series A funding round had closed 3 months ago at $8.5 million, led by Andreessen Horowitz's healthcare fund. The investors had been impressed not just by our growth metrics, but by our focus on patient outcomes over pure profit margins. I was paying myself a reasonable salary now, $95,000 a year, enough to move into a real one-bedroom apartment in Palo Alto and start paying down my credit card debt. More importantly, I was sleeping better than I had in years. Any word from the Rural Health Association about the conference keynote? Jake asked. Confirmed for next month, I replied. They want me to speak about innovation in underserved markets. The irony wasn't lost on me. A year ago, my family had questioned whether I was even employed. Now I was being invited to speak at national healthcare conferences. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Excited for family dinner tonight? Made your favorite dumplings? The monthly family dinners had evolved into something more manageable. We'd established an unspoken agreement. They would stop pressuring me to take traditional career paths, and I would share more about what I was actually building. How's the team feeling about the expansion timeline? I asked. Ready for it. Maria said, the new hires are settling in well, and our infrastructure can handle the load. Any concerns? Just one, Alex said with a grin. When do we start working on that European expansion you've been talking about after the meeting? I walked to my office and found a package waiting on my desk. Inside was a handwritten letter from Dr. Castis Patricia Reyes, a family physician in rural Nevada. "Dear Ms. Chen," it began, "I wanted you to know that MedConnect helped save a life yesterday. A 34-year-old construction worker came to my clinic with chest pain. Through your platform, I was able to consult with a cardiologist at UCSF within 15 minutes. The specialist immediately recognized the symptoms of a rare cardiac condition and guided me through emergency treatment while we arranged for medical transport. Without MedConnect, I would have had to make a judgment call that I wasn't qualified to make, or send him on a 3-hour ambulance ride to the nearest cardiac unit. Either option could have been fatal. Instead, he received expert care within minutes of walking into my clinic. Thank you for building something that makes rural physicians like me better doctors and gives our patients access to care they deserve." I pinned the letter to my office wall, next to Mrs. Rodriguez's note and 12 others like it. They reminded me why I'd chosen the harder path. That evening, I drove to my parents' house for dinner. The familiar routine felt different now, less like walking into a courtroom and more like visiting family who genuinely wanted to understand my life. "Sarah." Mom opened the door with a genuine smile. "Perfect timing. I just finished the dumplings." Dad emerged from his study, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. "How was the board meeting?" It still surprised me when he remembered details about my work. "Good. We're on track to hit all our Q3 targets." "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, leading me to the kitchen. "Michael and Jennifer are running late, but they'll be here soon." As we prepared dinner together, Dad asked, "How many patients did you help this quarter?" "About 25,000 consultations across all our partner sites," I replied. He nodded thoughtfully. "That's a lot of people." "It is, but it's also a small fraction of the patients who need better access to specialists. So you'll keep expanding." "That's the plan. We're talking to health systems in Texas and Colorado now." Mom set down her cooking spoon and turned to face me. "Sarah, I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For not understanding what you were building. For pushing you toward a path that felt safe to us instead of supporting the path that felt right to you." I felt tears pricking my eyes. "Mom, you were trying to help. I know that." "We were trying to help based on our own fears and experiences," Dad added. "But we weren't listening to what you actually wanted to build." Michael and Jennifer arrived as we were setting the table, both looking genuinely happy to see me. "How's the healthcare empire coming along?" Michael asked, and for the first time, it didn't sound condescending. "One patient at a time," I replied. "I've been reading about your expansion," Jennifer said. "The legal framework you've developed for multi-state telemedicine compliance is actually quite innovative." It was the first time she'd ever commented on the technical aspects of my work. During dinner, the conversation flowed naturally between family updates and discussions of MedConnect's growth. When Mom asked about my personal life, it felt like genuine interest rather than judgment about my priorities. "Are you dating anyone?" she asked. "I've been seeing someone for a few months. David Kim. He's actually our healthcare compliance lawyer." "That's wonderful," she said. "Will we get to meet him? Maybe at Christmas? If things keep going well?" "As long as he makes you happy," Dad said. "That's what matters." As I drove home that night, I reflected on how much had changed in 6 months. Not just the business metrics or financial stability, but the relationships with my family, and, most importantly, my relationship with myself. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "How was family dinner?" "Better than expected," I replied. "They're actually starting to understand what I do, and more importantly, they're starting to understand who you are," he texted back. The next morning brought news that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Dr. Williams from Kaiser Permanente called. "Sarah, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I know we didn't end up working together, but I've been following MedConnect's progress." "Of course. Dr. Williams, what can I do for you?" We're launching a new rural health initiative. And frankly, what you've built is exactly what we need. Would you be interested in discussing a partnership, not an acquisition, but a true collaboration? I'd be very interested in hearing more. Excellent, Doe. And Sarah, I want you to know that we've been impressed by your decision to maintain independence. It takes conviction to turn down acquisition offers and build something sustainable. After we scheduled a meeting, I sat back in my office chair and laughed. 6 months ago, I'd turned down Kaiser's acquisition offer against my family's advice. Now they were coming back, asking to partner with the independent company I'd chosen to build. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is trust your own judgment. My assistant knocked on my door. Sarah, there's a call for you. It's from someone at the Gates Foundation. They want to discuss global health applications for MedConnect. I picked up the phone, ready for the next challenge, the next opportunity to prove that building something meaningful was worth more than taking the safe path. "This is Sarah Chen," I said, and meant it in every sense of the word. The little girl who'd been told to choose a safer career had built something that mattered. The daughter who'd been cut off from family support had found her own way to financial stability. The entrepreneur who'd been pressured to sell had created lasting value by staying true to her vision. Success, I'd learned, wasn't about the exit strategy. It was about having the courage to define it for yourself and the persistence to build something that reflected your values, not your fears. Outside my office window, the Palo Alto skyline stretched toward San Francisco Bay, full of other entrepreneurs chasing their own definitions of success. Some would take the safe acquisitions, others would chase the biggest valuations, and a few would focus on building something that truly mattered. I knew which path I'd chosen, and for the first time since starting this journey, I had no doubt it was the right one.